Please help me welcome Bobby Albert.
Thank you, Lisa. Well, good afternoon. You know, being here, present surprise. There's the Davises over here from Wichita Falls. Y'all been living here now for 20 some odd years, and we spent a lot of time together bicycling together because I really enjoy bicycling. In fact, I've got over 100,000 miles now on my bike, so it's something I really enjoy. Well, the year was 1938, and my dad started a reupholstery and refinishing business. In the late 50s, and this was, you know, in the late 50s, this is before, you know, retail stores like we know them today, is that people would typically have their complete home completely reupholstered, their furniture reupholstered and refinished. And wouldn't you know it, often they were also moving, and they were afraid the movers were going to tear up this recently redone furniture, and so he started a moving and storage business there in Wichita Falls, where I'm from. And one thing that was very unique is I was very fortunate as a little boy to be able to hang out with my dad a lot. I mean, I knew who the bankers were, who the people that handled our insurance, the people that repaired the trucks, even the people that put the gasoline in the trucks. And this is back in the days when they only had full service gasoline stations. And so I was just very fortunate to be able to hang out with my dad. When I was 12 years old, my dad let me go out on my first moving job. Now, right before I went out, he said, "Bobby, now when you go out there, I don't want you to act like the boss's son." Now, I don't know about you, but at 12 years old, somehow I knew exactly what my dad meant by that. And from that day forward, I would do the kind of jobs and work that no one else wanted to do. I'd run between the truck and the house and the house and the truck. I'd take one break to everybody's two breaks. And I didn't realize how valuable that was going to be until a few years later. I was also very fortunate to be able to graduate from college at the age of 20 after 3 years. And so when I was, during the summer leading up to the fall semester, I was playing foosball with some buddies of mine that still had another year to go. And one of my friends walked up to me and said, "Bobby, your dad's had a heart attack and they've taken him to the emergency room." Well, my friends, you know, hopped in the car with me and we rushed down to the emergency room, and I can still see it in my mind even today because I had my friends behind me. We were walking in these double doors, and my mom was seated over here on the left. And as soon as I walked in, she stood up. And about that time, a long-term family doctor walked up, and he said, "I couldn't save him." And I tell you what, my mom and I were just stunned. I mean, absolutely stunned. And at that point, I began to understand that I was being thrust to become the leader of this small family business, and we had 5 employees. And a couple months later, I got some other horrible news, and that was, this is in 1973, so this is a long time ago. In 1973, we were $70,000 in debt, and our total gross revenue for the business was less than $90,000. Now you can see we were way upside down, way upside down. Well, my dad had 3 bankers, and one of them wanted to shut us down. Two of them wanted to shut us down. One of them wanted to go ahead and give me a chance. And somehow that one convinced the other two to give me a chance. Now, I found myself having to just scrape and scrape and scrape to make it work. Some of the things I had to do is that we had those 5 employees. I had to have a very uncomfortable conversation with them. And what I was going to need to ask them, and I met with them one-on-one, is that I was going to need to ask them to take a pay cut. Now, you can just imagine today, if you ask your employees to take a pay cut, it's not going to be a happy day. But I'm 20 years old. I was shaking. My lips were shaking. I was sweating. And you know what surprised me? I got 100% acceptance. That surprised me. And I think the reason why is they had a lot of respect for my dad. He really took care of them. He paid them well and really took care of them. But you know, the other thing that I began to realize, all those years, going back when I was 12 years old, working side by side, all those years, is that I had earned their respect because they knew of my work ethic. They knew that when I went out there to serve them and not to be served as the boss's son. And they also had the confidence that this 20-year-old was going to lead this company to overcome the challenges we were faced with. And by the end of 1974, just basically a little over another year, is that we had, with a lot of people helping me, we had grown our revenue to 254%. And we had the highest profit in the history of the company. And from that point forward, our company just kept growing until I sold my company in 2011 to a public traded company on the stock market, and we had over 150 employees. And that little small business, and especially the moving business, 99% of our business was moving people like from California to Illinois, from Florida to Virginia, to the state of Washington, to the state of Connecticut. That was 99% of our business. And we had tremendous growth. Well, today we have a brave new workplace. We have the millennials on one end, and we've got we've got the boomers on one end and the millennials on the other end. And the Generation Z are coming right behind the millennials. We're going to run out of the alphabet here pretty soon. But one thing is definitely happening in the workplace is technology is driving change at warp speed. And it's redefining loyalty in the company. And organizations that engage their employees are going to find this brave new workplace that are going to thrive. However, but there are going to be organizations that are going to fail to adapt, and they're going to wonder what happened, and especially when their best employees leave and they start seeing their profits shrink. So that's the reason why I want to share with you about what is outward success is an inside job. Often I get asked, what is workplace culture? What is workplace culture? You can go out there on Google, you can find all kinds of formal definitions, and be honest with you, they'll confuse you more than you might be right now. So the best way I can maybe describe workplace culture with you is that, we live here in Texas, and it's like the wind blowing. No one has ever seen the wind. But what we see are the effects of the wind. Talking about me bicycling, I'm always interested in what's the direction of the wind, right? Yeah, because I want to ride into the wind so it blows me back when I'm tired, And I'm also interested in the velocity of the wind, what's the speed and those kind of things as well. So, if we went outside, it's a little bit calm right now, but it's supposed to get windier today. But if we went outside, we'd see the leaves in the trees shaking, and we'll see the bushes are shifting back and forth. We don't see the wind, but we see the effects of the wind. And culture is a lot like that. And one of the other things that I have found is culture is the fruit and not the goal. I read about it all the time. I'm sure you're reading it too, that, like here's a good example. Like in the Silicon Valley, there with the startup companies and technology companies there, is that in California, is that often I'll read about how the leaders or the leader, the way that they've looked at their culture as a goal. And the way they do it is they think in their mind that if I can just make my people happy, they'll be productive and then they'll make more money for me. And what's happened when they go that route, they end up making it the goal instead of doing the right things and allowing it to be the fruit. And so what happens when, just think about this, when a farmer plants a fruit tree. A fruit tree it's amazing, takes 2 to 5 years to produce fruit, which is pretty amazing. So what does a farmer do? They spend a great deal of time preparing the soil. They cultivate the tree. They water the tree. They prune the tree over several years. And they know if they do the right thing in this process, in the preparation and all the planning and all those kind of things, it will produce this beautiful fruit off the tree. So one thing. Okay. So one thing I've learned in the business through the School of Hard Knocks over many years is that if you can think of the roots of a tree consist of 4 pieces, 4 ingredients, and that is the core values, and that's who you are, your purpose, why you exist, your vision, where are you going, and your super objectives. In some organizations, it may be the mission, and that's more what do you want to accomplish at the end of the day, every day? What is it that you want to say, we accomplished this? And then when you apply effective leadership, which is the trunk of the tree, the combination of those 5 ingredients there produces beautiful fruit, which is the culture of the organization. So what are the benefits? When you have an organization like this where people thrive and profits soar, what are the benefits? Okay, is that you may be familiar with an author and researcher. His name is Jim Collins. He's mainly known by his book called Good to Great. And he's also written another book called Built to Last. And I had a chance to spend a day with him along with 50 other people a few years ago. And he shared a lot about his research. He's really a researcher. I tell you how popular he is that he has sold, at that time, he said that he had sold over 60 million copies of the Good to Great book. 60 million, over. Well, me being an author, you know what the average author, how many books they sell? 700. So that may give you a little comparison of the success that he has had. And like I mentioned, he's mainly a researcher, but he also writes well. And one of his books, in their research, they went from, I'm sorry, I didn't mean, didn't mean for you to jump yet, is that went from January of 1926 to December of 1990. Now, what he found, what their research team found, is there was a group of companies that outperformed the average stock market 2 times. Now, I tell you what, I wish if I was that, if I had put some money in these companies back in 1926, I would have been very happy with earning greater than the average stock market 2 times. And I think you probably would too. But they also found a small group of companies that outperformed the average stock market 15 times. I mean, that's during that time period, that's almost like unbelievable. And I think that's the way they were looking at their research, like there may have been a mistake in the data. So they dug into it. They found the data was correct, but they were really trying to dig what was so unique about these companies, because many of these companies were over 100 years old. And you've got to think about 1926 and 1990, and he's continued to do research. But from that time period, we went through a depression. We went through multiple wars. We went through multiple recessions. You know, the economy going up and down, the political changes going on. But still at that, this small number of companies outperform the average stock market 15 times. Almost really unbelievable. Well, one thing that Jim Collins found in his research that was unique about these small number of companies is that was a principle of preserve the core and stimulate progress. Now, what he's talking about preserving the core, it meant from the time that the companies were founded by the founder is the core values. In other words, who they are and their purpose, why they exist, never changed. Never changed. But everything else was on the table for change. Everything. I mean, like compensation schedules, organization structure, policies, procedures, even products and services were constantly changing. But two things never change: core values and purpose. And these are the companies that outperform the average stock market 15 times. So what I'd like to share with you here is that every organization can build a culture where people thrive and profits soar by discovering who you are, and that's your core values. And let me just ask perhaps maybe one of the most important questions that you've ever been asked, and that is, who are you? Who are you? Bone deep. Who are you? Pretty tough question, isn't it? I had when I was addressing that question, it took me 2.5 years to figure out who I was. There wasn't any kind of methodology out there that I could figure out who I was. There wasn't anything like that. I had to ask myself over those 2.5 years, it was a real high self-awareness. I had to ask questions that I didn't really come up with answers. It was like, well, Bobby, what do you stand for? What are you all about? Why did you say what you just said? Why did you do what you just did? And why was it even important for you to say and do what you just said and did? Pretty tough questions, aren't they? But unless I went through that process, I wouldn't have never, over 2.5 years, I never would have discovered who I was. And one Sunday afternoon, it was like, I'm ready. I'm ready to figure out who I am. And I pull out a yellow tablet and my pen, and I sat in my thinking chair. My bicycle is also my thinking chair, but I sat in my thinking chair. It's like, okay, I'm ready. I'm ready to figure out who I am. But I didn't know what I was going to do, so I was trying to think, okay, now I'm ready, but I don't know how I'm going to do this. So I thought, well, what are some things that some words to describe that I have a passion for, things I get excited about. I mean, things that really give me energy when I do them. And so I wrote down some words to describe that. And I thought, okay, I'm going to look on the other side of the coin and of descriptions with words is when things are not done the way I like to see them done, I get upset. I get angry. I get foaming at the mouth because it was not done. And so I wrote down some words to describe that. And I was looking at both sides of the ledger there, and I started looking, I've got some words, same words on both sides. So I circled them. And I kept looking at them, and I started thinking, that is who I am. That is who I am. And so that's how I discovered who I was. And in my company, going back to 1992, every year we'd shut down the company for a half a day. We had these 8 buttons that we would introduce or reintroduce them, but one year we did something different. We introduced our core values. And typically core values are driven by the leader. So what are core values? Well, what they're general guiding principles of behaviors. This is how not only you, but your people, you want them to behave in the organization as they help you to pursue the purpose, the vision, the super objectives, or the mission. Help you pursue the strategies, the tactics, the measurable goals. This is how you want them to behave. And one thing I have found, when your employees clearly understand those elements, those ingredients in your culture, they not only make better decisions, but they make better decisions faster in this economy where things are changing at warp speed. So what are they not? What are they not? Well, they're not words that you aspire to be someday, that you hope you're going to obtain. Because that's not being authentic. That's not who you are. And integrity is so important here. And that's one thing, is to understand and going through the process that it's not something that you aspire to achieve someday, or you hope you behave that way. It's who you are. Often I see, I go in organizations, I see they got this real nice glossy paper, or they may, for a business plan they're taking into the bank, and they've got the core values there. They may be even on the website. And but when I go around talking with the employees don't really know what the core values are. And if they did, what they would tell you, we're not living them out. So they'll tell you they're not authentic. So about 4 months before I discovered who I was, I came up with this phrase that I wanted to be a values-driven company that achieved results, not a results-driven company that has values. There's a huge gap between those two companies, because, and just my observation and being around a lot of CEOs and presidents and owners and leaders of departments or divisions or whatever, is that they're very heavy results driven. Very heavy results driven. So when we got ready to introduce the core values that day, I went to our graphics company. They came up with some artwork for me. And the reason being, because each year we would create these T-shirts that we would give to our employees the day before we would have this company-wide event. And so I shared about the core values, and I wrote them down, not in any particular order. And they asked me what were the key words, and like the first one, the first phrase was was to pursue personal growth. And so what they're doing, when I raise my finger, they change. So that's the reason why they're changing. But so the key word there is growth with a G. And they came back and they said, Bobby, do you realize that these key words spell out the word givers? And I said, man, that sounds even just like me as well. And so we had these T-shirts with the logo and just the word givers. Well, our human resource director came in my office and says, Bobby, they're trying to pay me to tell them what the word giver stands for. So there was a real high suspense and anticipation of coming the next day. And I tell you what, it was an event that no one showed up late. Everybody was on time. And we did 3 things that day. You've seen on television the Wheel of Fortune game show. Well, we played the same kind of a game, but we call it the Wheel of Values. And each table, there were 6 to 8 people at a table, and each table had their own game board, and they were trying to guess like that first phrase to pursue personal growth. And I tell you what, people were standing up. Man, they were really getting into this game. And the reason being is because behind me was a huge spinning wheel with prizes on it. Now, they wasn't any like colored televisions on there, but they were pretty nice prizes. So you can see why everybody was really getting into this. And the table that guessed the phrase first, they were supposed to yell out the word givers, and then they got to go up and do the spinning wheel for their table. So after that, I would share with stories about where this came from, because it's driven by the founder of the organization. And so, and after that, each table, we had a flip chart for each table. And that table would get up and go to the flip chart to discuss in a group setting there, each table with how are we going to live out that particular core values. So you can see it was a very fun day, and it resonated so well. I usually, typically after these events like this, I walk around our place of business, talk to the employees and things, and people kept telling me, Bobby, this is who we are. This is who we are. See, one thing in my company, and I can't explain how our human resource department for years had been hiring people of the same core values of mine. I don't know how they figured out what I was looking for. But Jim Collins, in his research, what he found at the strength of these companies is that inside those organizations, it's not a popular word today, but he said it's like a cult inside, because everybody has the same core values. So when you live out these core values, what are the benefits that we saw in our own company? And that was that, I introduced them in 2005. I sold the company in 2011. You know what the economy was doing in late 07, 08, 09, 2010, and I'm sure there's several of y'all were impacted by the economy during that time. I mean, it was in the tank. And but even at that, our revenue grew about 5 times, and our profits grew over 5 times. Now, one thing you want to keep in mind, for years, our employees clearly knew what our purpose, what our vision was. They knew what our super objectives were. They clearly knew that, but the one thing that was missing were the core values. And it just like when we introduced that, the growth of our business really took off. And of course, as Lisa had mentioned, we were the 2 years leading up to us selling the company, we were asked to participate, and we were awarded to be one of the best companies in the state of Texas for 2 years. Well, from human resource terms, they use the word discretionary effort. Now, what it means in human resource terms is that it's where people give over and above what's required of them. And I can assure you, being the CEO of my company, to get to that point is like finding the goose that lays the golden eggs. And this quote up here it really speaks to everything that I'm talking about here, is that it says you can buy someone's time, you can buy someone's physical presence at a given place, you can even buy a measured number of skilled muscular motions per hour or day, but you cannot buy enthusiasm. You cannot buy devotion of hearts, minds, and souls. You have to earn these. Pretty good. Well, I've been talking about every organization can build a culture where people thrive and profits soar. And we've talked about discovering who you are, which are your core values. And this is the reason why outward success is an inside job. Thank you.